In an era of turmoil, a youth fleeing from famine was sold into a mine for 10 Mantou, but he set foot on the road of truth building because he accidentally got a low-water classic. Refining qi, building foundations, golden elixirs, forming infants on the path of cultivating immortality, he overcame thorns and thorns, refined weapons and elixirs, practiced methods and gods, and crossed the heavens and tribulations. One day, when he stood at the peak of this world, he was surprised to find keywords of the novel. Xianmu Qiyuan no pop-ups, Xianmu Qiyuan TXT complete collection download, Xianmu Qiyuan latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The Great Chaos of the World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Great Chaos of the World's Southern Territory. At that time, there was great chaos in the world, and a great war broke out between Yushi Kingdom in the south and Jinshi Kingdom in the north. Both sides deployed as many as 1 million soldiers. At that time, the two countries were engulfed in flames of war, and the people were struggling to make ends meet. At the same time, there was a continuous night of rain in the leaking houses, and there was a severe drought in Nanzhou, Yushi Kingdom. The people had no harvest, and thieves were rampant. In order to make a living, the people fled their homeland and embarked on the path of exile. On an official road in Huai County, Yushi Province, a group of refugees marched towards Huai County, with a force of 7 or 8 miles and at least thousands of people. 12-year-old Xiao Lin is walking among this group of refugees, supporting his frail father Xiao Shan and holding his sister Xiao Ji with the other hand. His dark face is full of confusion and loneliness, and he pursed his dry and cracked lips to untie a gourd from his waist. Gently shaking, there was a faint sound of water coming from inside. Xiao Ji, have some water. Xiao Lin handed the gourd to his sister Xiao Ji. Xiao Ji's tanned face showed a sensible expression as she shook her head and said, "Brother, I'm not thirsty. You can drink." Upon hearing these words, Xiao Lin's nose was sore and he almost shed tears. It had been over 2 months since he left his hometown, and he had already run out of dry food. 2 days ago, his mother starved to death on the road. If this continued, in less than 2 days, his weak father and sister would probably starve to death. There are still over 100 miles away from Huai County in Nanzhou. Judging from the current speed of the refugee team, it will take at least 3 more days. Xiao Lin has no confidence in whether he can survive these 3 days, let alone that even if he reaches Huai County, he may not be able to find food. Looking at his father's waxy cheeks and his sister's thin body, Xiao Lin was full of remorse. If someone could give him a Mantou now, he would definitely agree to any conditions. Suddenly, there was a rapid hissing of horses ahead, and under the rolling smoke and dust, a group of people and horses were running towards them. Xiao Lin was startled in his heart, and his face was full of fear. He had long heard from adults that on the way to Huai County, there were many mountain bandits who killed without blinking an eye, robbed money and women. If he didn't comply, he would be killed. Along the way, he had seen many corpses displayed on the roadside, and only bones were left to be eaten by wild beasts in the mountains. If he really encountered the mountain bandits, there would be no way out, Xiao Lin sighed in his heart. Xiao Lin stared intently at the smoke and dust in front of him, until he saw the large, jade characters on the chest of the people and horses rushing out of the dust, and finally let go of a suspended heart. "It's the official army," Xiao Lin murmured to himself. Although the official army often does things that oppress the people, they are much better than mountain bandits and won't kill people indiscriminately. However, he still quietly pushed his sister behind his father. The leader of this team of officers and soldiers is 5 big and 3 thick, with sharp and angular facial features, and uniform length of whiskers. The only scar on his face from left eye to right cheek gives him a strong sense of ferocity. He looked at the group of refugees in front of him, frowning deeply. After a while, a cold smile appeared on his face. He waved his hand behind him, and after a while, one person drove their horse over. The leader of the official army whispered a few words in this person's ear, while also coldly scanning the refugee team. The subordinate nodded while listening, and at the same time, looked at the refugees with a smile on his face. After the horse was driven away, the entire official army suddenly began to elongate, gathering the refugees from both sides. Seeing this scene, Xiao Lin's face was gloomy and his heart sank. Quickly, thousands of refugees were gathered in a pile, covered in darkness, all of whom looked at the Scarface army led by them with fear and unease in their hearts. Satisfied as he looked at the dark crowd, a smile squeezed out from the scar-faced officer's face. However, this smile did not bring him a friendly image, but rather added a hint of eerie and terrifying atmosphere. I am Lu Dali, the vice-captain of Huai County. I was ordered to exterminate the mountain bandits in Xianmu Mountain of Nanzhou. I need to recruit some migrant workers to carry the siege equipment. All healthy men over 12 years old can join. Those who join will be given 5 Mantou for settling down. When the mountain bandits are exterminated in the future, they will also be resettled to avoid your exile. The crowd suddenly became agitated. If it was normal, no one would care about the cost of settling down. It could even be said that it was a pity. But now it is different. Most of these refugees are hungry for several days, and they may fall on the roadside at any time when they walk. In this case, 5 Mantou are not a matter of several meals, but a hope of survival. Soon, some people came out of the crowd and expressed their willingness to be recruited. Seeing this scene, Xiao Lin sighed. He understood that these people came out not for themselves, but just for their families to survive. After all, with these 5 Mantou, there was a glimmer of hope. Quickly, this group of officers and soldiers set up several tents on the roadside, placed several tables and chairs, and began to register the recruited migrant workers. Father, I'll go. Xiao Lin grabbed his father who wanted to register and said with a smile. He knew that his father was very weak, and coupled with the dark wounds left by his early hunting, in this situation, he had relapsed one after another. If he really went to work as a migrant worker, he might have died on the road before he could reach the bandits' lair. Brother. Xiao Ji, 1 year younger than Xiao Lin, had red eyes. She knew that once her brother went, she might never see him again. Xiao Ji, be good. When your brother is not around, you must take good care of your father and wait for him in Huai County. He will definitely come to find you. Xiao Lin forced a smile as he suppressed the pain in his heart. Xiao Ji nodded obediently and then smiled at Xiao Lin. Seeing Xiao Ji's forced smile to comfort himself, Xiao Lin's nose soured. He thought of his mother who had starved 2 days ago. He gritted his teeth and told himself that he couldn't let his sister be like his mother. Steadily turning his head, he wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes with his fingers and casually threw them away. Then, without looking back, Xiao Lin walked towards the outside of the crowd. The long queue extended for several hundred meters, and roughly estimated that there were at least a few hundred people who had signed up. Xiao Lin was in the middle of the queue, feeling a bit uneasy. He saw with his own eyes that several elderly applicants had been driven back, and he understood that these elderly people wanted to use their lives to exchange for hope for their families to survive. There were also a few young people, even thinner than Xiao Lin, who were also pushed back into the refugee team. Xiao Lin is very worried, afraid that he won't be hired either. Xiao Lin, you have also signed up. A childish voice came from behind, and without looking back, Xiao Lin knew that it was Xiao Shi who had grown up with him. Xiao Shi's father was a blacksmith, and their family was originally relatively wealthy in the village. However, a year ago, his father and elder brother were conscripted to join the army and never returned. He and his younger brother and sister were left behind. His mother starved to death a few months ago before fleeing the famine. There was no way, and Xiao Shi, who was 1 year older than Xiao Lin, could only bring his younger siblings out. What should your younger brother and sister do when you come out? Xiao Lin's face showed a surprised expression. What else can we do? Let Uncle Xiao help lead us. I hope we can eliminate the mountain bandits as soon as possible, and then we can return to Huai County. Xiao Shi sighed. Xiao Lin didn't speak. He knew Xiao Shi said that Uncle Xiao was his father, which was also impossible. Xiao Shi's situation was similar to his own. Without these Mantou, the three of them could not survive. Instead, it would be better to exchange some Mantou to let younger brothers and sisters have the hope of surviving. Soon, it was Xiao Lin's turn. Name: Xiao Lin. Hometown: Guzi Village, Huai County, Nanzhou. Age: in order to increase the chances of being hired, Xiao Lin falsely reported being 1 year old. Upon hearing this, the registered official looked up at Xiao Lin with a skeptical expression on his face. Official, we are both young and 13 years old this year. You see, we are both very strong and definitely capable of working. At this moment, Xiao Shi walked up from behind, with a smile on his face, and even showed his tender flesh to the official army. Xiao Shi, who had been forging iron with his father since childhood, was very sturdy and taller than Xiao Lin by half a head. Although he was only 13 years old, he looked similar to a young man of 15 or 16. Obviously satisfied with what Xiao Shi said, the official army did not embarrass Xiao Lin. They nodded and wrote the words Xiao Lin on the roster. After receiving Mantou with Xiao Shi, they returned to the ranks of refugees. They took out 4 of the 10 Mantou and gave them to Xiao Shan and the 3 children. Then they wrapped the rest with coarse cloth and handed them to Xiao Shan. Xiao Shan took it over and took out 2 Mantou from the coarse cloth. You haven't eaten anything for more than 2 days. You also have a Mantou. Xiao Lin and Xiao Shi looked at each other. Xiao Lin took a Mantou, broke it in half, gave Xiao Shi half of it, and then smiled at Xiao Shan. Father, 1 for us is enough. Looking at her sister Xiao Ji, eating Mantou sweetly, Xiao Lin suddenly felt that he had done a very right thing. 3 days later, Xiao Lin and Xiao Shi followed the official army and entered the Tianlu mountain range. The Tianlu mountain range was located to the west of Nanzhou in Yuxi Kingdom, connected to Jinshi Kingdom to the north, and was vast and boundless. After several hundred miles, it became an endless primitive mountain forest, with towering mountains and towering peaks that could not be seen at a glance. For countless years, no one knew how big the Tianlu mountain range was, because anyone who delved into it would have no news. Lu Dali, the scar-faced officer, led hundreds of officers and soldiers, driving these hundreds of migrant workers towards the Tianlu mountains. It had been 4 or 5 days, and in Xiao Lin's view, they had penetrated more than 100 miles into the Tianlu mountains. Along the way, they often heard the roar of wild beasts, which made them truly tremble with fear. If it weren't for the large number of people, they might have been attacked by wild beasts long ago. Xiao Lin is a bit strange. In theory, although the bandit's nest is also in the Tianlu mountains, it cannot go so far. The bandits survive by raiding homes and robbing houses. It's a bit unreasonable for them to travel for 10.5 days to do a business. New book opening, requesting support. Collect, collect, collect. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Becoming a miner. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 3. Miner's Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 4. Mining Tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Xiao Lin Murders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 6. Payment of ore. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 7. Positive conflict. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 8. Cultivation techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 9. The 100 Refinements Heart Classic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Entering the Mountain for Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.